So, all right, Norm, you won fair and square. I don't even know what they are. They're seen us.
For decades, Edgar Hansen navigated the Bering Sea on the Northwestern, braving icy waters and towering waves alongside his brother Sig. At 54, the deck boss with a quiet wit and steady hand has finally broken his silence in a rare local interview.
I'm totally confident I can run the boat and do what we got to do to bring the crab in. The thing I worry about most is getting somebody hurt because of one of my mistakes.
Fans have long wondered about the man behind the myth. The sudden disappearances from the show, whispers of personal struggles, and the toll of a life spent at sea. Today, we take a closer look at Edgar's journey, exploring his highs, his hard-earned lessons, and the private battles that followed. And stick around. By the end, he confirms what so many feared all along. The shocking guilty plea that shattered everything. It's July 2018. Inside a quiet courtroom in Snohomish County, Washington, stands Edgar Hansen, the dependable deck boss of the Northwestern that Deadliest catch fans had come to respect. But this time, there's no camera, no crew, and no stormy sea. Just a man facing consequences for something no one expected. Edgar pleads guilty to fourth-degree assault with sexual motivation. The case involved a 16-year-old girl who had spoken to her therapist the year before, revealing what happened and how he had assaulted her. It wasn't speculation or rumor. Edgar himself admitted to it in a handwritten statement. He said he was sorry. He said he was already getting help, trying to make sure nothing like that would ever happen again. Because of a plea deal, he didn't serve jail time. His 364-day sentence was suspended as long as he followed the court's rules. He paid around $1,600 in fines, had to undergo an evaluation, and complete whatever treatment was recommended. Legally, that was it. But in reality, it changed everything. For years, fans saw Edgar as the steady hand on the Northwestern, the quiet force balancing out his older brother Sig's fiery personality. He was the kind of guy who'd fix a broken hydraulic system mid-storm and crack a joke 5 minutes later. To see his name in headlines for something this serious felt like a punch to the gut for many. The news spread fast online. Some fans expressed anger. Others said they couldn't believe it. Threads popped up debating whether he deserved forgiveness or permanent exile. And through all of it, the Deadliest Catch production and the Discovery Channel said nothing. No press release, no explanation. When season 14 ended in August 2018, Edgar simply disappeared. One episode he was there, the next, gone. No goodbye scene, no mention, just silence. But here's the thing, he didn't completely vanish. Over the next few seasons, some sharp-eyed viewers started spotting small clues. A blurry figure in the background who moved like Edgar. A familiar voice shouting over the roar of the engine. A pair of hands repairing a cable in the dark. There was even a video on Instagram from his niece, Mandy, that briefly showed him working on the Northwestern during the start of the 2018 season. So was Edgar still part of the boat's crew, just off camera? Probably, yes. He wasn't featured, but it seemed he hadn't left the family business entirely. Still, it's hard not to wonder what led him here. What was going on beneath the surface? Was it the pressure of fame, the isolation that comes with being at sea for months at a time? Or was this something that had nothing to do with fishing at all? Something darker that had been building long before the cameras ever showed up? To really understand, we have to go back. Before the fame, before the controversy, to the beginning of his story. Roots in the sea. a Norwegian legacy forged in Ballard. Edgar Hansen's story begins in the salty, working-class neighborhood of Ballard, Seattle, on January 14, 1971. The air there smells like fish, diesel, and rain, the kind of place where the ocean isn't a backdrop. It's a way of life. He was the youngest of three brothers, Sig, Norman, and Edgar, born to Norwegian parents who carried the sea in their veins. Their father, Sverre "Snei" Hansen, had left Norway chasing the American dream, and like many men from his homeland, he found it out on the open water. After years of grinding work on other boats, Sverre finally bought one of his own in 1977, the Northwestern. The Northwestern wasn't just a crab boat, it was a floating legacy. A 125-foot symbol of everything the Hansens stood for: hard work, risk, and pride. If that boat went down, so did their livelihood. From the time Edgar could walk, the docks were his playground. While other kids spent weekends at parks or arcades, Edgar was climbing ropes, dodging puddles of oil, and listening to the low hum of engines. He grew up surrounded by people who measured time by tides, not clocks. By his teenage years, he wasn't just watching, he was working. Out on deck before sunrise, hands numb from the cold, hauling gear until his arms ached. Their father didn't allow excuses. If something broke, you fixed it. If you were tired, you kept going. That was the rule. Sig, the oldest, had a fire in him, the kind of energy that made him captain material early on. Norman, the middle brother, preferred the mechanical side, keeping engines alive when the waves hit hard. Edgar was somewhere in between, quiet, observant, the type who could read the room and keep things steady when others lost their cool. Those long days taught him more than how to fish. They taught him how to lead, how to endure, and how to stay humble, three things that would define him later on. By the time he reached adulthood, Edgar had built a life around two worlds, the sea and his family. He married Louise, and together they had three children, Stephanie, Logan, and Eric. When he was home, he tried to make up for lost time. There were backyard barbecues, school events, and family dinners where the talk usually drifted back to fishing anyway. But truthfully, the ocean always had him. The Bering Sea wasn't just his workplace. It was his teacher. Tough, unpredictable, sometimes cruel, but also deeply rewarding. During the 1980s and 90s, the Northwestern became one of the top boats in the fleet. Edgar had earned his spot as deck boss, the one who kept things running smoothly on deck. He coordinated every move, made sure no one got hurt, and kept morale up during those brutal crab seasons. Out there, success could change your year. One good haul meant a fortune. A bad one could sink you. Edgar was respected not because he shouted the loudest, but because he worked the hardest. People trusted him, and it's easy to see why fans later connected with him. He was the type of guy who seemed like he'd rather fix something than talk about it. When Discovery Channel came knocking in 2005 with a new reality show called Deadliest Catch, the Hansen brothers couldn't have known what was coming. Cameras, interviews, fame, all that felt foreign. They were fishermen, not TV stars, but the show exploded. Suddenly, crab fishing wasn't just a dangerous job, it was must-watch television. And just like that, Edgar Hansen became a familiar face to millions of people around the world. Viewers saw his quiet humor, his calm under pressure, and his loyalty to the Northwestern crew. He wasn't the star who craved attention. He was the glue that held things together. But as fame crept in, so did the pressure. The long hours, the constant cameras, The weight of being both a fisherman and a public figure, it all started to add up. Fame has a funny way of shining a light not just on your victories, but on your flaws too. And for Edgar Hansen, that light would eventually become too bright to hide from. Catapulted to fame. The Deadliest Catch phenomenon. When Deadliest Catch first hit Discovery Channel back in 2005, no one really knew what to expect. A show about crab fishing didn't sound like a ratings juggernaut. But then it aired, and boom! People couldn't look away. It was gritty, unpredictable, and strangely addictive. Suddenly, a handful of crab boats out on the freezing Bering Sea became household names. And right in the middle of it all were the Hansen brothers, Sig, with his intensity and leadership, Norman, the steady hand behind the scenes, and Edgar, the one fans quietly fell in love with. He wasn't loud or dramatic. He just did his job, cracked a few dry jokes, and kept everyone moving. At the time, Edgar was in his mid-30s. He didn't seem to chase the spotlight, but the camera loved him anyway. There was something about his mix of calm confidence and sarcasm that made people feel like they knew him. Fans remember moments where he'd tease Sig during rough weather, saying stuff like, "There he goes again," yelling at the waves. It was that simple, relatable humor that balanced the chaos. Viewers got to see the real deal, the exhaustion, the danger, and the moments of triumph when a haul went right. The waves didn't care about the cameras. Ice built up on the rails, pots went overboard, and storms hit without warning. Through all that, Edgar was the guy who kept things from falling apart. He fixed engines mid-storm, kept morale up during 20-hour shifts, and solved problems before they became disasters. There was one episode in particular during Season 9 that fans still talk about. Edgar and Sig clashed over how far to push their quota. It wasn't scripted drama. It was two brothers under pressure, both trying to protect the family business in their own way. You could see how much the weight of it all was starting to show. Around that same time, Edgar opened up a bit about his struggles with stress and sobriety. It wasn't a grand confession, just small, honest moments that slipped through between the chaos. That honesty made him human. Of course, success came with its own set of problems. Once the cameras became a permanent part of life on the Northwestern, everything changed. Imagine trying to do one of the world's most dangerous jobs with a film crew watching your every move. You can't really have a bad day, even when you're running on no sleep and freezing temperatures. By Season 10, Edgar started taking the captain's chair more often. Sig trusted him completely, and fans loved seeing him step up. Ratings went through the roof. There were t-shirts, interviews, and even guided tours of the Northwestern. The Hansens had gone from fishermen to full-blown TV personalities. But fame doesn't come free. The sea took its toll on Edgar's body. Years of lifting 800-pound pots, standing for hours on shifting decks, and working through injuries. He'd smile on camera, but off-screen, he was icing his back, popping painkillers and trying to keep up. The job was brutal, and so was the schedule. He talked about family often, his wife, Louise, and their 3 kids. But being gone for months at a time takes a toll, no matter how strong your family is. There were whispers that things were getting harder, that he seemed quieter, more tired. Viewers noticed too. His jokes were fewer, his movements slower. People started to wonder, was it just age? Or was something deeper going on? Battling the elements, injuries, sacrifices, and hidden strains. The Bering Sea doesn't go easy on anyone, and Edgar Hansen's body was living proof of that. After decades out there, he'd collected more injuries than he could count. Years of hauling crab pots left him with a bad back that never really healed. His shoulders were worn from lifting gear in 40-foot waves, and there was that rib injury from a fall during season 13 that left him barely able to breathe. He tried to manage it, surgery here, a round of therapy there, but the pain always found its way back. Once he compared it to a constant fire. And still, he kept going. Because in that world, stopping wasn't really an option. If you missed a run, you missed a paycheck. But physical pain wasn't the only thing he was dealing with. The mental side of that life was just as rough. The long stretches at sea meant missing everything. Birthdays, holidays, graduations. When he talked about it later, you could tell it hit him hard. He'd come home after months away and feel out of sync, like life had kept moving without him. The ocean gave him purpose, sure, but it also took a lot in return. Fans who watched closely could sense that weight. There were moments on the show when you could see it in his face, the mix of exhaustion and something deeper. The stress, the pressure, the constant risk. He'd lost friends out there too. In 2017, the crab boat destination went down with all 6 crew members. News like that doesn't leave you. It reminds you how thin the line is between a routine trip and tragedy. And then there was the fame part, which didn't make things easier. The cameras never stopped rolling, even when things got tough. Edgar's role on Deadliest Catch was demanding enough before the lights and interviews. Off-camera, the grind continued. The sea doesn't care about production schedules. Financially, the rewards were good. Some seasons brought in 6 figures, but it was always unpredictable. Weather, quotas, regulations, they could change everything. And while the money helped, the toll on his body and mind didn't stop adding up. By his late 40s, you could see he was slowing down. The wisecracks were fewer, the fatigue more obvious. Still, he stayed on the Northwestern, holding it together like he always had. But what no one knew was that a much bigger storm was waiting. Not out at sea, but on land. It wasn't one you could see coming, and it would change everything about how fans remembered him. The unraveling, scandals, aftermath, and silent exile. After the events of 2018, Edgar Hansen all but disappeared. He slipped out of the spotlight quietly, heading back home to Washington State. Discovery never said much about it, and that silence only made fans talk more. Online, people speculated about what had really happened behind the scenes. The network had already dealt with other cast controversies, and this time they seemed determined to keep things contained. Edgar was simply gone. His name, his face, his presence, erased as if 14 seasons had never happened. Away from the show, he shifted focus. The years that followed were about repair, not redemption tours. He poured energy into his family, trying to rebuild what fame and chaos had strained. He kept up with his court-mandated treatment, and, little by little, started piecing his private life back together. The Northwestern didn't disappear from his life completely, though. He was still seen here and there, doing maintenance, to me, helping out quietly, but he stayed away from the cameras. The dream of running the boat full-time was over. Some fans caught glimpses of him in later episodes, a hand in the corner of a shot, a shout of his name when something broke. But those moments were fleeting. It felt like watching a ghost drift through his old life, present but unseen. He never went on social media to defend himself or set records straight. No interviews, no public appearances, just silence. Financially, he was fine. Years on Deadliest catch had given him enough cushion to live comfortably. He still consulted in the fishing world from time to time, but health issues, old injuries, worsening pain, started to slow him down. By the time he hit 50, word spread that he wasn't doing too well. Friends mentioned lingering back problems and arthritis from all those brutal seasons at sea. Some fans assumed the worst, that the man who had survived decades in freezing waters had finally burned out on land. But Edgar didn't vanish out of weakness. He chose quiet over chaos. For once, life wasn't about storms, quotas, or cameras. It was about peace. Still, peace doesn't erase the past. And when he finally decided to speak again, the world listened. Because at 54, Edgar Hansen finally broke his silence, and what he said confirmed what many had feared all along. Breaking the silence, the confirmation we've dreaded. For the first time since 2018, he addressed what had happened and, in a way, confirmed the fears that had been quietly hanging over fans and observers alike. He admitted the legal troubles changed everything, not just his career, but the person he had become. There was no deflection. He accepted full responsibility, calling the assault a serious mistake and explaining that therapy and self-reflection were his path toward making amends. When it came to Deadliest catch, he acknowledged that leaving the show wasn't entirely his decision. The plea played a big role, and while some viewers might have assumed bitterness, he said he understood Discovery's position, describing it as understandable given the circumstances. There was no resentment in his tone, just a quiet acknowledgement of consequences. He also spoke about the toll it took on him emotionally. Years of public judgment and criticism wore him down, making the isolation from the sea feel heavier. Physical issues added to the strain. Chronic pain from decades of fishing injuries forced him to slow down, confirming what longtime fans had suspected. His body had been pushed beyond limits, and it showed. Now, he lives a quieter life in Washington, prioritizing time with Louise and their grown children, who remain supportive. Fishing still exists in small doses, maintenance work or short trips, but the days of full-scale crab seasons and long, grueling hauls are behind him. He's embraced a simpler rhythm, away from cameras, ratings, and deadlines. Gratitude comes through in his words for the fans who stuck by him. But he also made it clear he understands the anger and disappointment from others. There are no excuses. This isn't a redemption story wrapped in spectacle. It's a candid acceptance of mistakes and consequences. His life after the show is quieter, humbler, and less glamorous, but it reflects the reality of someone who spent decades at the mercy of the sea and learned that the cost of that life isn't just physical. It's also personal, emotional, and sometimes irreversible. Even now, looking back, the question lingers: what comes next for Edgar Hansen? And can life after such a storm ever feel entirely steady? What are your thoughts? Share with us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Check out the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what's next. You'll discover.